All right, guys, we are to our last chapter of Masterminds. I am so excited to see what happens, to find out how they made it in the train. Chapter 27 goes back to Eli, which, if you remember, our very first chapter was also from Eli. He's kind of the main one telling this story. Okay, chapter 27. We have no idea where we're going. None of us expected to be huddled against crates of Gatorade in a rattling boxcar, so we never bothered to research railway routes or schedules. If things went according to plan, we'd be tooling east in Dad's Lexus. Correction, Felix Hammerstrom's Lexus. He isn't my father anymore. Technically, he never was, any more than the United States was created at a real tea party. He thought he could hide the idea of rebellion from us, and in the end, he got more rebellion than he knew what to do with. Despite the whole body throb of my wounds, the exhaustion of 24 hours on the run, the numbing lack of sleep, the hunger, and the paralyzing fear over what might lie ahead, I feel a deep satisfaction for that. Project Osiris is officially over. Is it? Amber's not quite so sure. The whole point of Osiris was to raise us in an ideal environment. Maybe we just lived up to everything our parents expected us to turn into in the first place. The criminal masterminds we're cloned from. Masterminds? That's us all right, Malik snorts. Nobody who saw us getting on the train would accuse us of having any minds at all, not to mention we screwed up our escape so badly we almost got ourselves killed. And his voice drops in volume. We did get one of us killed. He reaches for a bottle of Gatorade, but we can see the desolation in his frantic gulping. Malik, we can't know for sure that Hector didn't make it. He shakes his head. Even if he was with us, he never could have gotten on that train. He would have wimped out just like he wimped out of jumping off the truck. It's too bad he won't be around to see us march into Happy Valley with an army of cops. Some of the color returns to Amber's pale cheeks. I'm all for that. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, I put in quickly. We've got a story to tell, but we'd better be really careful who we tell it to, if we can tell it to anybody at all. But we can't do nothing. We owe it to the other clones who are still in Serenity. We'll get to that, I promise, but only when we understand how things work in the real world. Remember, we're clones, and we don't know how that will go over. We're also exact copies of some of the worst criminals in history, younger, but identical. Just because we don't recognize who we're cloned from doesn't mean other people won't. We thought we'd have a car, Amber points out. Without one, we're hiding and hopping trains. We'll never learn enough about the world to figure out how to fit into it. I pull over a case of bottles and sit down facing them. Our best hope is Randy. He knows the outside world, but he also knows what it's like to be from Serenity. What makes you think we can find him? He's at McNally Academy outside Pueblo, Colorado. He can give us a place to lie low while we figure out how the world will look at us. It's a boarding school, so we can blend in. No nosy questions about poor kids being on their own. Malik speaks up. Randy's parents are Osiris researchers. How can we be sure he won't call them and rat us out? That's an easy one. Randy's my best friend. He'd never stab me in the back. He'll help us if he can. I thought I'd never want to walk again, but after a few hours in a boxcar, I'd give anything to stretch my legs. It's the middle of the night now. We still haven't come to a single town. I'm conjuring a murky vision of the map I saw that time on the plastics factory internet. I remember that the rail line split in the eastern parts of New Mexico. One branch continues east and the other curls north into Colorado. That's the one we need if we want to end up somewhere near Pueblo. But we don't know which route we've taken until we stop at a station. It's one more variable to sweat over, as if we need another reason to sweat in a hot box car. Malik pulls a fresh case of Gatorade off the pallet, tears it open, and tosses a bottle to each of us. I make no move to catch it, and the container bounces painfully off my face, rolling along the floor of the car. The others share a laugh at my expense, but I barely notice. I'm staring at a sheet of newsprint sticking out of the skid at the base of the pallet. It's from a paper called the San Bernardino Sun, and the banner headline, thousands. Bartholomew Glenn denied parole. Something is ringing a bell in my head, but why? I've never heard of this guy. How could I? News stories about crime are never allowed to reach kids in Serenity. It's the town's primary mission. I snatch up the page and begin to read. Bartholomew Glenn, the notorious crossword killer, was denied his first petition for parole yesterday. The brilliant but twisted Glenn is currently serving 9 consecutive life sentences for 9 grisly murders. The nickname Crossword Killer comes from his habit of taunting the police with clues to his hideous crimes in the form of extremely difficult crossword puzzles. And then some letters of the headline kind of fade out, and I see it as clearly as if it's projected on the wall of the boxcar. So do you remember, guys, when they found those letters, ARTHOMWGEN? So I don't know if you can see that. So what he thinks that was is like the missing letters spell out Bartholomew Glen. The shock is so total, so horrific, that it's a few moments before I can explain to the others that it's not a direct hit with a Gatorade bottle that has me pale and shaking. This is the mysterious name on that paper we photographed on the conference table in the factory. There's only one reason why the name of a crossword killer would appear on a document in the very nerve center of Project Osiris. He was one of the criminal masterminds who served as DNA donors for our experiment. One of us is cloned from Bartholomew Glen. Our devastation is total. Sure, we knew we were cloned from bad people, but since we never had a name before, I guess we all pictured a cartoonish figure in jail somewhere, maybe even wearing a striped suit. In his vision, the guy or girl was a lawbreaker, yes, but also sort of harmless, because how much harm can you do from prison? Bartholomew Glen isn't harmless. He's a psychotic killer with 9 innocent people on his conscience, and one of us is an exact copy of him, right down to the last cell. We pass the paper around, reading and rereading the details of Glen's horrible crimes. We don't want to know, yet somehow we can't resist. When I pictured criminal mastermind Tory adventures, it's always a little, romantic, like an intricately planned scheme to break into the Louvre and steal the Mona Lisa. But Bartholomew Glen is just sick. Don't worry, Malik says bitterly. It can't be either of you. You have to be cloned from his identical twin sister, Bartholomew, the puppy crusher. It's not funny, Malik, Amber exclaims. Who's laughing? Malik retorts. He's probably me. Toxic element, remember? It's a destructive way to think, but now that the cat is out of the bag, we think we might as well get it out in the open. There are 11 of us, 7 boys and 4 girls. Bartholomew Glen could be any of the 7. He could even be, I claim up. It's not going to improve anyone's mood to remember Hector. No, not Hector. Malik is adamant. Hector was a good kid. And anyway, I add, whoever it is didn't kill anybody. This Glen guy did. We have to get used to the idea that we might find out we're cloned from some pretty awful criminals. We lapse into a melancholy silence, listening to the endless rumble of the train. Amber is the first of us to doze off, a Gatorade bottle clutched in her arms like a newborn baby. Malik is next, falling into troubled dreams. Tori's eyes are closed, but I think she's still awake. Me? No way. Just the idea of Bartholomew Glen and his 9 victims is enough to ensure that I may never lie my head down again. I remember Malik's words when I called off the search for Hector. At least I'm not stone cold like you. Stone cold. If there ever was an expression to describe the crossword killer, that would be it. Do I have the strongest reaction to Bartholomew Glen because I'm him? That turns out to be my last waking thought. Eli! The voice reaches me through turbulent dreams, exploding trucks lighting up the night. Hector, Amani, gone. Enemies in purple. Felix Hammerstrom chasing me in his Lexus. The front bumper nudging the backs of my knees as I run for my life, and then I'm down. The weight of the speeding car crushing me like an insect. Eli, wake up! It's Tori leaning over and shaking my shoulder. The situation comes hurtling back. The escape, the train, the life-saving Gatorade. Malik and Amber are just rousing from sleep. The train, never very fast, is slowing down. It's just after dawn. The sun is still low in the sky. Through the open doors of the boxcar, we can see signs of civilization. Buildings, houses, power lines, roads. Is it a city? Amber whispers. I don't think so, Malik replies, but it's bigger than anything we're used to. Crummier, too. He's right. Some of the houses along the tracks are really ramshackle, and the fencing is torn and rusty, and surrounding nothing has ever let us stay broken or even unpainted. That doesn't seem to be the case out here. We roll past a faded sign. Colorado City. Colorado, I breathe, encouraged that we've come north. I have no clue where Pueblo is, but at least we're not heading east, away from McNally Academy and Randy. Brakes screech as the train lurches to a stop in the middle of the rail yard. Stacks of lumber and pieces of equipment are scattered all around. Skids loaded with cargo are lined up along the track beside several forklift trucks. What's that stuff for, Amber wonders. The answer comes all too soon. A yard worker in coveralls and a hard hat leaps in the door of the boxcar, turning to signal an approaching forklift. He takes one look at the 4 of us and barks, "What are you kids doing in here?" Since we have no answer for that, the only course of action is flight. Tori is the first to react. She runs for the open door, which is suddenly blocked by a huge pallet of cargo carried by forklift arms. The worker puts an iron grip on her wrist. With his free hand, he grabs a walkie-talkie from his belt. "Security to car 36. Amber and I watch in horror, but Malik springs into battle. He snatches up a full Gatorade bottle and bounces it with deadly accuracy off the side of the man's jaw. The blow knocks him backward into the wall, and he releases Tori. The four of us make a break for freedom. With the doorway blocked by cargo, Tori squeezes through the gap to the right of the incoming load. Amber and I slip out the opening on the left. The worker reaches for Malik, who drops to the floor and tries to roll under the arms of the forklift. He almost makes it. The pallet descends, and he's trapped beneath it, screaming for help. Tori and I reach in and try to pull him out, but his legs are stuck as the wooden skid slowly comes down. In a matter of seconds, he'll be squashed. Amber doesn't hesitate. She leaps into the cab of the forklift, dislodging the driver. The man is so shocked at being suddenly and aggressively attacked by a 13-year-old girl that he topples out of the other side and sprawls onto the gravel. She slams the heel of her hand into the control and pushes it in the opposite direction. The load lifts off Malik and rises, striking the boxcar's ceiling. Malik scrambles free. Amber jumps down, and the four of us take off. A pudgy, uniformed security guard is running along the track in our direction. We look around desperately. There, Tori exclaims, pointing to some trees. There is a tall chain-link fence in the way, but luckily the mesh is torn away from the post. We slither underneath and sprint for the woods. It's like the last thing any of us need in our starved and exhausted state. Yet, at this point in our adventure, capture is not an option. If we're arrested here, the local police will start looking for our parents, and it's only a matter of time before we're in the custody of the Purple People Eaters. I risk a look back and see the security man helping the two workers bringing the forklift's payload down from the boxcar ceiling. I guess railway business is more important than 4 stowaway kids, but as soon as the cargo is where it's supposed to be, they might come after us again. We have to act fast. Abruptly, the woods come to an end, and we blunder onto a busy street. Tires squeal, and a big SUV lurches to halt 6 inches from my chest. The driver leaps out from behind the wheel, white-faced. "Are you kids okay?" "Sorry," I blurt, and we hustle back onto the sidewalk. We've only been in this town a few minutes, and already we've been caught, chased, and almost run over. Has our Serenity upbringing left us so clueless that we're doomed to blunder from near miss to near miss? How long before one of those close calls turns into a real disaster? Right now, the odds of us making it in the outside world seem like 1,000,000 to 1. The sights and sounds are overwhelming, car horns and the faces of so many people we don't know. The road was filled with more vehicles than we've ever seen all in one place. I struggle to make sense of where I am. It's not a big city, but both sides of the road are lined with stores and restaurants, and people are coming and going. This must be the downtown. My eyes fall on an older car parked at the curb. It's painted yellow with a black and white checker pattern and a driver sitting inside. Something about it looks familiar, but I can't quite put my finger on it. Tori follows my gaze. Is that a taxi? Of course. There are no taxis in Serenity where an 8-minute walk would take you across town. But from books I've read and movies I've seen, taxis will drive you wherever you want to go, like away from the train depot, for example, or to McNally Academy. We run for the car and pile in the back seat. We have to go to Pueblo, I tell the driver. She peers at the four of us in the rear view mirror. That's an hour trip. Are you sure your kids can afford the ride? We begin digging in our pockets for the money we've been hoarding. It's a nerve-wracking moment since we have very little sense of what things cost beyond the borders of our hometown. We produce our stash, fistfuls of crumbled bills wadded up and spotted with dirt and blood. It would buy a lot at the general store, but everything in Serenity is so artificial that our life experience is basically worthless. Plus, none of us have ever been in a taxi before, much less paid for one. For all we know, it's the most expensive thing you can do. We can't predict whether our money will be enough to take us to Pueblo or even down the block. Our driver opens wide at the sight of our bills. 1s, 5s, 10s, 20s, 50s, 100s. For that, I can take you to Maine. Just Pueblo, please, I say politely. For the first time, she turns around and looks at us over the seat. She sees what we've gotten used to. We are sunburned, scratched, bruised, disheveled, and filthy, not to mention red-eyed and exhausted. What happened to you kids? Maybe you should stop at the hospital first. No hospital. We have to get to Pueblo, to McNally Academy. She stares at me for a minute. Then the car starts the car. You rich private school kids. The shenanigans you get yourself into while spending daddy's money. You're going to be in big trouble when the teachers get a look at you. Probably, Tori agrees solemnly. The taxi pulls away from the curb. We've passed our first real-world test. Pueblo looks run down and neglected compared to Serenity, but the red tile-roofed adobe brick buildings of McNally Academy are the nicest things we've seen so far. The campus is in the hill country a few miles outside of town, nestled among the high desert pines. The taxi leaves us, $200 poor, on the school's main drive. It's chillier than Serenity. Still morning. Students are everywhere on their way to breakfast and morning classes. Whoa, Amber whispers. Did you ever think there were this many kids in the whole world? There are maybe 100 of them scattered around. But when you're used to a place where there are only 30 and 0 unfamiliar faces, this counts as a mob scene. Get used to it, Malik comments. That's one thing that they have plenty of in the outside world. People. We're only interested in one person, I remind them. I notice that we're starting to attract attention, and not just because we're scratched and beaten up and our clothes are torn and dirty. McNally may seem crowded to us, but it's probably not a huge school. Chances are the students all know each other, so newcomers stand out. If any teachers see us, they're going to ask us questions. Let's find Randy before the adults who run this play want to know what we're doing here. Still, we hang back. We don't talk to strangers. In Serenity, there are no strangers if you don't count the purple people eaters. How would you approach someone you've never met before? The McNally kids are all in groups chatting. The fact that they belong only emphasizes the reality that we don't. Malik is the first one to work up the guts. He targets a boy our age walking alone. Hey, you knew a guy named Randy Hardaway? The boy stops and looks us over. Yeah, I know Randy. He obviously notices we're a mess, but decides not to ask about it. Are you friends of his? I nod. From his hometown. Can you point us to him? It's kind of a surprise visit, adds Troy. He's probably in his dorm room. Hayden 33, the kid tells us. Randy skips breakfast and sleeps till 5 minutes before class. He's kind of famous for it. I can't help smiling. Some things never change. He points out the right building. We hurry in that direction. The sign reads, Hayden Center for Student Living, boys only. It doesn't seem to be a hard and fast rule, though. There are both boys and girls in the hall milling around, calling for each other, shoving books into backpacks, and generally gearing up for a day of classes. A nervous glance flashes among the 4 of us. The hallway is crowded. At close range, under indoor lighting, our bedraggled state and our otherness will be even more painfully obvious. At first, we just stand there helpless. The corridor is wall-to-wall people, and moving through a crowd is something we have no experience with. It's Malik who finally figures it out, mostly because he's big enough to clear a path. The rest of us get behind him and follow his wake. The McNally kids stare at us as we pass. Some of them from mere inches away. A low murmur goes up in the hall. Who are we? Why are we here? An eerie dread takes hold of me, and I begin to shiver in spite of the heat of my sunburned skin. In my mind, I'm thinking, this is what it's like to be a clone in the real world. A strange curiosity, not quite human, not quite acceptable, possibly dangerous. I tell myself that no one can know that. We're the focal point because we're battered, ragged strangers, not because of the invisible history of our birth. But I can't escape a deep foreboding that people will be looking at us for those other reasons soon enough. Malik stops dead, and the 3 of us bump into him from behind. Here it is, he tells me, room 33. He steps aside and I knock. The report of my knuckles on the wooden door echoes inside my head. The kids in the hall gather around this like it's the 18th hole of a championship golf tournament. For the first few seconds, nothing happens. The silence is so total that it's almost as if these McNally kids realize that what they're witnessing is the most important moment in our lives. There's a scrambling sound inside the room. The knob turns and the door is pulled wide. Randy stands there, his hair unruly as always, goggling at me in an open-mouthed shock. Then, his comfortably familiar features resolve into a delighted grin, and he steps aside to invite us in. Hey, I see you found my note. That's the end. Oh my gosh. All right, guys. So they made it to Randy. And that, like I said, this is book 1 of a 3-part series. So I'm going to head to Spearman and see if I can get the next book so that we can keep reading, because I have to know what happens. I hope you all enjoyed that book. That was such a good book. Masterminds. So, and that is Gordon Corman if you guys want to get ahead or do the other one. In case I can't get it or whatever. But anyways, y'all, that was so good. Thank y'all for reading that with me. It was so fun.